Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm super excited to have friend and fellow Unicorn Society member, James Pratt from Pratt Personal Training over in New Jersey. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Pretty excited to do this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We had it planned on the calendar for a few weeks, and every time a day got closer, I was like, I'm super stoked to talk to James because you're kicking ass in Jersey over at Pratt Personal Training, and I wanted to, share a great conversation with our audience about how you're kicking ass, all the lessons you've been learning on the growth I've seen over the last almost year. I think we've been working together, and so thanks so much for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of the podcast for a while, so it's exciting to be on.
Yay, you're famous now. That's how it works. Just one podcast and you're a star. Well, maybe first start by telling our listeners a little bit about Pratt Personal Training, how long you've been around, what kind of training you do.
Yeah, so we started in May 2016, essentially trying to be the hybrid of what one-on-one and group classes were.
Yep.
So we started with customized training in small groups. At the time, we only took 6 members, and we were very athlete-based. And then from 2016 to now, I guess at first, I probably thought it would be just me in the business for the foreseeable future. But fast forward to now, we have 10 employees in total, 6 trainers, and we are 80% adult-based now, as opposed to probably 80% athlete-based 6 years ago.
Wow. That's quite a pivot. What do you attribute that transition to?
Yeah, I guess for starters with athletes, they are very seasonal and they age out. So, every athlete that comes in, we pretty much look at them as they're going to be here 3 months a year, whereas the adults are 12. So they have 4x the opportunity or 4 times the duration to actually refer their friends. And a lot of them have been here for a very long time. So fortunately for us, our adults have been here the majority have been here for an average of 2 years.
Yeah. Good for you. I mean, that retention just shows what a great experience you and your team are creating. The kind of community and culture you've built is so admirable. Well, good for you. I'm here. I want to dive in, and there's a few topics that we want to talk about today. And they touch a lot of different areas of the business. But listeners, what I asked James in advance is just what are some areas where he's learned some lessons over the last 6 months or a year from his business, from things that are going well and things that are not going well. And he came up with some really great topics. And I want to dive right into the first one. So one of the things that you said that you've been doing recently that's been a huge win for your team is starting to streamline your exercise library. Starting to streamline how you create programs because, as your team is growing, you mentioned 6 trainers, 10 total staff. That's a lot of people to keep aligned and on the same page. And I'm sure all those trainers have different levels of experience and abilities. So figuring out how to program design and keep the exercise library tight and dialed in so everyone can get it is such a crucial lesson. So talk a little bit about what you were doing and what you've transitioned to.
Yeah. So we used to just have meetings. We would have trainer meetings and say, hey, we really like these exercises. Let's put them in programs for the right person.
Sure.
And it probably made us seem like we were better than we thought because we would give them to the right person, we would coach them up really well, and we were a staff of just a few. And we would have trainers meetings for anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a week overall.
Wow.
So, we were so heavily invested in the training side of it that we were probably spending too much time on that and not enough on the sales and marketing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that we have a lot more clients, we have a lot more staff, we made the decision over the last year or so moving towards this and that we want a certain amount of exercises on this exercise menu and we do not deviate from that at all. And even something like that's had so many growing pains because the programmers in the business are like, yeah, but I really want to do this with this person. I think it would be great. Like, sorry, it's illegal now. So.
That's amazing. Well, and also like what an amazing intention you all had. Like, we're going to meet every week and we're going to talk a ton about all the great things we're learning. We're going to add new exercises all the time to really create a unique program for each, for specific clients. Like, what a beautiful intention to like serve and create a great experience. And it's just not scalable. It's just not scalable to meet that often for that long.
Exactly.
Or to constantly be adding exercise to the library, which, 80, 90% of clients don't need that fancy new exercise you just learned on YouTube, right? Like, they just don't need it. And so you can talk a little bit about the benefits to narrowing down your library. How's that helped?
Yeah, our coaching and our feedback on our coaching, because we have our members rate our coaching at the end of each program, 1 through 10
Hmm.
scales. So our coaching has just been so much better because we're saying the same things more frequently. We're
Mm.
coaching up the same exercises. Our eyeballs are perceiving it the same way. We know exactly what to troubleshoot. We know what the common mistakes are that we're going to see. Whereas historically, even just a minor tweak in some exercises that are similar in movement patterns, we would still have to adjust the setup a little bit. We're going to do this in split stance instead of standing. So now we have to coach up the stance as opposed to just the movement pattern. So there was a lot of little variables that we probably made life more difficult on ourselves than we had to.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just, as your team grows to have everyone deliver a consistent coaching experience, it's harder and harder if your exercise library is 900 exercises. How could everyone possibly be coaching those exercises the same? And so it delivers a much more consistent experience, which is exactly what you're finding out.
Yeah.
So how do you, obviously, there's always going to be some squeaky wheels in any change project in an organization, right? And so how do you get over the resistance some trainers had to this tightening of the belt?
Yeah, and the end game goal for it, everybody agreed that our goal was to be as good of trainers across the board from top to bottom.
Mm,
And I think when we talk to the programmers who have been here the longest, when we paint the picture of saying, because of this excessive range in exercises on our library, are we making life very hard on our new staff members?
sure.
And are we creating a range of training capabilities from our trainers who have been here the longest, who are creating the exercise menu, who are designing the programs, versus the new incoming trainers that are not designing the programs and they're being first exposed to this in a quick meeting.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they're supposed to do a good job of coaching these exercises on the floor.
Yeah, it's such an unfair expectation, right? That if you've been around for a long time, you want the variety, you want to keep adding exercises, you want to keep it interesting for you. But the poor new person who just started now, instead of having to learn 200 exercises, has to learn 500,
Yep.
right? And it's a lot to ask, especially as they get more complicated. But I think, what your experience, I've seen a lot, but the same is true at Mark Fisher Fitness, is that when we did start to rein in our exercise library, it was easier to onboard people. We got more consistent experience for clients, better consistent feedback. It was easier for all the coaches to be on the same page about how we coach each thing. It's also just less to manage and wrangle, right? Just from like a database perspective. And so, good for you. I know it can be a tough switch to make. It comes with some resistance, but I love the way that you overcame that resistance, which was like sharing a shared goal. You're like, hey, we're all on the same team here. The ultimate goal here is to be able to onboard people better, be consistent in our coaching, and everyone's on board with that. I mean, that's a shared goal that we all aspire to. Yeah, bravo, my friend. I'm so glad that's going well for you. Let's pivot because I want to cover two more topics with our time. So I'm going to be disciplined with myself today because I can talk about one thing for like 3 hours, which
Yep.
is why this podcast used to be an hour long. And so the next thing I want to talk about, and this is a very common thing, we hear this all the time in Unicorn Signing members. This was true at Mark Fisher Fitness, which is in the first few years of your gym, oftentimes you're growing exclusively by word of mouth, right? If you don't start doing marketing and selling from day one, you're really just growing because you're like the new kids in town, people are talking about you, and you're grabbing all that low hanging fruit of people who are looking for a gym and find you. And you share with me that for first 5 years of the business, 5 years plus, you really had the mentality of, we're a word of mouth gym. We're going by word of mouth. And in the last, 6+ months, you really started investing in paid advertising and marketing for the first time. And so talk to me a little bit about what made you change your mind. How'd you go from we're word of mouth, that's good, that's all we never be, to I need to start marketing?
Yeah. I think when it comes down to investment dollars was probably the thought process more than anything
Mm,
of, I think we're doing really well without spending money, which is great. And we're
yep.
growing 30% per year, every year. But in hindsight, when you look back at it, and if you get a better idea as to because because we were so confident in our product, I started to think that if we did just get some more people from the outside who weren't referrals in, that
Mm,
we could change their life, whether they end up signing up or not. So the conversation in house started becoming, why don't we just get more people in the doors? Who cares who signs up? Who cares who stays? But if we are so confident that we have one of the best training products, then people are going to sign up, and
yeah.
we're probably going to do really well if we find a way to just get them in that isn't exclusively just referrals and word of mouth.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. And that's it. It's, that's the mentality I think we also had at Mark Fisher Fish. We were growing year over year. You said 30%. And that feels very satisfying. We're like, why change anything? Why spend money on Facebook, Instagram ads, or whatever else, other kind of marketing you want to do? Um, and then you have to pause and think, okay, well, what if each of those years was 50% year over year growth or 150% year over year growth?
Yeah.
We'd have a totally different business if I would have invested more heavily in other ways of getting people through the door. But it can be a tough mindset shift because it takes a lot of trial and error and a lot of investment to figure out how to build your marketing engine. And so, talk to me a little bit about what are the things you've been trying over the last 6 months as this kind of first dip into marketing.
Yeah. So we hired a full-time marketing person.
Mm-hmm.
We basically, we're running some Facebook ads and we're doing some stuff with Google now.
Yep.
It's just been tremendously helpful. We're probably spending a dollar amount that I never thought we would for
Yeah.
marketing, but with the amount of people that we have coming in, it's tremendously justifiable right now. So it's such a good feeling, I think, ultimately for everybody involved that with these people coming in, they're getting an experience that we think is potentially life changing for them from a fitness perspective.
Yep.
So it's become less about, hey, let's make sure we get these people in and let's get them signed up with their members. Let's just provide a life changing experience for as many new people as possible. And I see the training staff getting fired up over that.
Yep.
I see the sales staff getting fired up over that. And obviously the marketing person as well
Yeah.
gets pretty excited over getting all these new people in.
Well, that's the best kind of mindset to have about sales, right? It's not about closing the deals. We're not motivated by closing the deals. We're motivated that when we close the deals, we're helping people change their lives. We're helping people move better, sleep better, feel better, right? Like that's the exciting part. And so I think it's so great that you in this first, even this first 6 months, your team is generating that kind of mindset about marketing and selling because all too often they think of it as a dirty word. And the first thing I hear people say is like, we don't want to sell.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to sell. We're like,
Yeah.
well, what we do is we have to convince people to get out of their own way to accept our help. That's the sales process. And if they could do it without us, they would have already, right? And so bravo to you. I think it's a great mindset to start with. So you obviously have the benefit of hiring a full-time person as one of your first goes out the gate. But for our listeners who maybe don't know, maybe can't afford a full-time person as their first thing, what do you recommend to them? How would they get started a little slower?
Yeah, I'm sure learning, which is something decided not to do,
Yep.
but I'm
Yep.
sure learning how to do some of these paid ads isn't overly complicated.
Hmm.
And I think it's probably trial and error. Even if you don't necessarily make money on the investment at first, losing money to learn how to eventually make money might make sense for you from a marketing perspective at some point. So I wouldn't be. I think the conversation I have frequently with some people when it comes to spending money on marketing is, I don't want to lose money,
Yep.
but you might at first because you kind of have to pay that debt to learn what's actually going to work for you.
Yeah.
So chances are, by the time 6 months, 12 months goes around, if you're doing your due diligence and learning how to be great at it, then you're probably going to end up making some money and getting a return on that investment towards marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't say it better, James. It's an investment, right? And upfront, you might lose out for a few months, right, to learn that learning process. But over time, you're going to win if you learn how to do it well. It's the whole skill set you're learning is how to get more people in the door to pay you. And I think, to your point, people can start small either by learning themselves. The information on how to run Google ads, Facebook ads, any of those, it's free. It's freely available on the internet. The knowledge is there, right? If you have that can make the time to do it yourself. And if you want a little bit of help, there's plenty of people who can help you run those ads, create the content, et cetera, on places like Upwork, Fiverr, et cetera, virtual assistant, platforms. And so, good for you, my friend, for being able to switch your mindset into, what, we're going to get more people in the door by being more proactive marketers, and we're going to get help. We're going to get help. Like, I don't want to learn these skills. I have
Yeah.
enough on my plate, right? It doesn't sound fun to me. So I'm going to get someone else who it is fun for, who's going to run with the ball. And I think that's just so wise. It just shows such self-awareness that you have, that you to know, like, that's not me. And, and that resonates with me because it's also not me, right? I just know I'd be miserable if I had to, create Facebook and Instagram ads all day. And there's people out there who love doing it. Why
Yeah.
not let them do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. I mean, one more question before I switch topics here, which is, how has your team been adjusting to the fact that you're likely getting less qualified leads now, right? Because when you're word of mouth, everyone who comes in the door is warm as hell. They know somebody who knows somebody. They've heard of you forever. When you start marketing, you start getting colder leads, and it requires your team. At first, what I see a lot is teams have a real crappy attitude about colder leads. Like, well, they're just a bunch of tire kickers, a bunch of blah blah blah. And it's a waste of our fucking time, and you get a lot of negative attitude at first. So, how is your team overcoming that and learning how to adjust to colder leads?
Yeah, I would say that for starters, we did have that conversation at first. If
Yeah.
we're going to be doing this, we may get some people who, one, can't afford it, or two,
Mm-hmm.
really aren't that interested, or they don't have the gap in seeing the benefit of what we do versus where they are now. Uh, but I would say our staff is amazing at something like this because we
Mm-hmm.
do point back to the core values and we say if our goal is to change someone's life, having them sign up isn't mandatory in doing so.
Yeah.
So I hear our sales staff tell people all the time, there's like they'll talk to them about the prices before they even start the trial. And they'll be like, I don't care if you sign up. They're like, I'm not even going to call you to try to pressure you into buying if you don't want to buy, but definitely do the trial.
Yeah.
One, because it's cheap. And two, if you want to go work out on your own after you learn some stuff here, go for it.
Great.
Totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the staff that we have on the training floor. They're so into making a difference in everybody's life that I think it just organically comes out that they are putting together the best product for everybody. And if we do a good job of designing the program from a simplicity standpoint and not overwhelming the person, both with any of the exercise science variables, but also the communication that is necessary to have them understand what we want them to do with their
Yep.
exercises, their form, and all that stuff. If we do all of that well, then usually it's a great experience for the person, and our trainers get some momentum over wins like that with new people.
Yeah. Well said. I think it just, it's a real great example of your leadership that you all had that conversation early and you're staying on top of that mindset of like, our job is to provide an amazing experience. If we can convert them, great. We're going to do everything we can to convert someone who we're a good fit for and they're a good fit for us. And if they're not, we're still going to give them the best friggin' experience. They'll go tell other people about us. Maybe they will come back someday, and they often do come back, by the way, right? When they can afford you, or when their life is a little different, or the schedule changes. And so good for you. I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners to say, like, that's the sales energy we're looking for at a gym. Is we're adding value to the world, whether you convert at a high ticket or price or not. Good for you. All right. So in our remaining minutes, again, I'm being disciplined today. I want to talk about our third topic real quick, which is like so many people listening to this podcast as an owner, you've been putting some ducks in a row over the last, few years to slowly remove yourself from the day-to-day operations of the business. And you've been making some great progress and you're not that far away from really removing yourself entirely. So first, can you just talk a little bit about what makes that a goal for you? Why slowly work yourself out of the operations?
Yeah, I've noticed that when I do get the opportunity to really try to be the visionary and entrepreneur of this business,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I seem to come up with the best ideas, when I don't have
Yeah.
mental fog related to the day-to-day type work that
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoy doing and I allow it to clutter my brain probably too much.
Yep.
So going back to when I was training, I never thought I would do anything except for train. And then I quickly realized that not only did I stunt the growth of my business, myself, but also my employees, because I never
Mm-hmm.
let them really take over the job that they were capable of doing. I just kept standing in their way. And I've seen that at every level of what I've been doing of one, being a trainer, two, managing the trainers, three, being a salesperson. Every step along the way, I found myself probably staying in the roles for too long.
Mm.
Um, so the next thing I think for me in regards to this business in this one location is I have the people that I need to run a really good business. And this business needs a visionary more than anything else to see what our next steps are. And that's probably going to be me. So
Yeah.
let my staff do a great job at the sales that they've been doing, create better systems, better SOPs around that. Let the trainers do an amazing job training. Let our managers and our programmers do a great job in overseeing all of that. And then I could try to make this bigger, faster by
Mm-hmm.
getting out of their way.
Yeah. That's an amazing sentiment, James. And I'm going to go back to that phrase, that word I used earlier, which is self-awareness, right? You're displaying such a great degree of self-awareness to say, hey, I'm the bottleneck in my own business, right? Every step of the way, I've had roles that I've kind of grabbed onto maybe a little too long. And that makes sense. We all do it, When we
Yeah.
find a role that we really are good at and we get great at it and we're the best at it in our facility, it makes sense that we want to keep doing it. We feel valued, we feel appreciated, we feel smart. And
Yeah.
so then letting that go and moving on to the next role where we maybe don't feel as smart, that's new. Who wants to fucking do that, right? It's like a constant process of of reinventing yourself,
Exactly.
and it can be a scary thing. But I mean, good for you. I mean, it's a perfect example of going from someone on the floor that's training to managing the trainers to then learning a whole skill set of sales to now managing a sales team. Right, you've been slowly replacing yourself, working your way up, and you're right that when you get to the size you're at, the gym needs a visionary. It needs someone who's really looking at what's coming up, what's next, how do we keep improving, how do we keep growing. And so, yeah, I think you said it beautifully by describing that day-to-day operations as like often a mental fog that prevents you from doing the big picture thinking that the business needs. So can you just talk maybe a little bit more tactically? I know we only have a few more minutes, but can you talk a little more tactically about how did you line up those ducks in a row to then start replacing yourself? What did that actually look like on a day-to-day level?
Yeah, I wish I could say I did a better job of documentation and SOPs, but really it was
Mm,
just unnecessary, unnecessary amount of time to put into meetings
yeah.
and just constant oversight.
Mm,
Hey, this is what I want you to do going forward. All right, let's meet and let's go over that many, many times. Let me watch you do it, and then we'll
hmm
course correct every time I'm not seeing it. But borderline. You know, probably managing too hard in some scenarios. But yeah,
Sure.
if I can go back, I think one of the big things I learned from Business for Unicorns is like the systems and SOPs that you guys have in place
hmm
that we have access to. Like
Yeah.
if I had been doing this the whole way, I probably could have saved hundreds of thousands of hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to get that in writing as a testimonial for us. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, just, I think what you did a beautiful job of is, getting out of your employee's way. And then what I heard you describe was really mentorship. Was like, let's meet regularly, follow me. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to give you feedback. And I think you're right that, the thing that could have lit that on fire maybe faster is in that process, creating clear SOPs to be able to hand off what you were teaching them a little bit faster and make it more evergreen. But now that you know that, now that the sky's the limit for what you and your team can do in terms of constantly growing and scaling. Well, you know what? I'm going to leave it at that sentiment because I think it's such a great win and great lesson learned that, you as an owner are often the bottleneck and you need to get out of your people's way, let them do their job and create systems that set expectations for what you want. And you're doing that so beautifully, James. So thanks for sharing.
Thank
Um,
you. Michael. Appreciate it.
yeah. So let's end there. Let's wrap it up. I feel like I have to have you back at some point because there's always more to talk about. But for listeners who want to learn more about Pratt personal training or follow you on the interwebs, where do they find out more about you and your gym?
Yeah, trainpratt.com is our website, and our Instagram is Pratt Personal Training. Mine is Pratt53.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I think that's probably about it.
Yeah, well, friends, go follow James and his team. They're doing incredible work, and y'all are just such an inspiration from watching you grow over the last few years. So, thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it. And dear listeners, if you love this podcast, let us know. Leave us a 5-star review everywhere you listen, and email me, Michael@businessunicorns.com. Let me know who you want me to talk to next or what you want me to talk about. I really appreciate you listening. Thanks again, James. Have a kick-ass day.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.